Margaret Atwood is a very important writer of English literature today, and particularly of Canadian English literature. Now, The Edible Woman is again one of the most significant texts of Atwood, published in 1969. Let's mark the year. Exactly 20 years after Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, which was published in 1949. It's not coincidental. She has been through this and then has been heavily influenced by the arguments of Beauvoir that women are not born but made women. Of course, currently this theory is under scanner. Around 30 years ago, in fact, Butler has also done certain things saying that even sex is as much cultural as gender. Anyway, those things we'll talk about in another video, but this is important, especially for students of gender studies. This is possibly the single most important novel which can be said to be a practical or literary application of the basic theory of feminism as argued by Simone de Beauvoir. In between, there was another text, actually, 1963, that is The Feminine Mystic by Betty Friedan. This has also been argued that Atwood had gone through this feminine mystic before writing this. Now, what happens in the text, The Edible Woman? Of course, for that you have to read the text. I cannot be a alternative for the writer. I always say that our job is to give you certain approaches, as Helen Gardner said in discussion of her role about the critic, that the critic, or we may say the teacher, serves as a guide, gives you a kind of a torchlight. With that you can have a look at the text, but you can later create your own light. So lead kindly light. Now we find in the beginning the protagonist of the novel, Marian McAlpin. She works in a market research company. It is Canada of early 60s. Now what prevailed in Canada of early 60s still prevails in India. And in fact, Indian rural part has not even gone up to that stage. So another important side observation, we do not live in the same time, even though we live in the same time. We are living, say, in the 2020s today, but 2020s is not the same for America or Russia or for an Indian village. There are differences. COVID has brought a kind of similarity that is a different thing. It will go away, don't worry. So, but then what I wanted to say is that you belong, in spite of belonging to the same era, you do not also belong to the same era. Why this is so? Place matters. So not only time is important, but place is also very important. Please don't forget about this when we say very blatantly we live in the 21st century or 22nd century. That's true. That is the chronology. But what is the topography or topology? What is your place? So even in India, the villages and the metropolitans, they live in different ages actually. Anyway, Margaret Atwood shows Marian McAlpin living with a very radical kind of lady. She is quite soft, but the other roommate that she shares her room with is Ainsley, who has very radical ideas that she wants to be a mother but without a husband. Such a radical idea in the 1960s Canada. Now it is not radical there, but in India it is still radical. I think only Shushmita Sen or some famous celebrities have this kind of thing, single motherhood. But anyway, Clara wants to do it because she thinks what destroys families these days are its fathers. That is Clara's view, not Marian's. Anyway, Marian gradually is shown to be in love with a person called Peter. So basically, it's a love story, but not like typical Bollywood love story, "Tu mile dil khile aur jeene ko kya chahiye." Rather, it is more akin to a slightly offline movie like Khoon Bhari Mang. You know, though murder doesn't take place. Now, after being in love, she gradually finds that the boyfriend, Peter, tries to control her moves. That is very, very common with heteronormative, or we can say heteropatriarchal males. They decide everything for their whom they consider their women, including their dress, whether they should go for a job or not, etc. Now, some women are happy with this, maybe I am saying, because people have different priorities. But Marian McAlpin is shown as a woman who resents this. But at the same time, she is not very radical instantly. She cannot speak up, she cannot protest against these moves. So she suffers silently, caught between her attraction for Peter and her awakened self-consciousness that she should not let her life to be decided by any boyfriend. I mean, for men, it would be any girlfriend or wife whatsoever. Controlling mechanisms are there in, beyond gendered perspective also. But anyway, today that is not our topic. Anyway, so Peter, in fact, when they go to a restaurant, this Marian McAlpin, Peter, then Ainsley, and another of their friend, Len, Peter starts telling in a telltale way the gory tale of a hunting, how he killed a rabbit by shooting and then cut its gut, and then there was blood and its entrails all around, and that horrifies Marian to the extreme. She finally leaves the restaurant and starts running away. She runs on the street like the Runaway Bride movie in a way, and then Peter and others, they all run after her. For them, it is comedy or farce. But what is the symbolic significance? That is, Marian is trying to run away from patriarchy, the rule of the father, the rule of the man. That is patriarchal men, not all men. Not all men are patriarchal. I am not. So, like this, there is another figure, Duncan, in this novel, who is not patriarchal, who helps Marian in her own terms. So that's why all men are not the same. That's why Margaret Atwood is intelligent and sympathetic. She knows the details, unlike the very radical feminists who say that all men are these or all men are that. She doesn't generalize. She gives different kinds of types. That's why Atwood is a great author. The greater an author is, I know it will be controversial, the greatness these days, but I still believe with Lewis, the greater an author is, she or he gives you different kinds of varieties on the plate. Her canvas is huge. There is variety because life has variety. Not all are same. We cannot paint all men or all women even with the same brush. Anyway, runs away. Then she is captured by man, that is Peter. And then Peter comments, "I did not know you were the hysterical type." Oh my God. Typifying women. That is unconsciously Freudian. We do not know whether Peter read Freud, but it was a common knowledge in Europe then. Because Freud had commented that hysteria is women's domain in the structure of patriarchy. That is, repression of sexuality leads to hysteria in women. I personally think it is true, but sexually not in narrow terms. Desire. Any desire, if it is repressed, hysteria. What about men? Freud said it leads to aggression. So aggressive male, what you call toxic masculinity anyway these days. Peter also had that. So we have to understand desire in a broader, more Lacanian term than Freud. And of course for Freud also sex did not only mean the physical sexuality. We think it's a broader spectrum, but it can be confusing. So anyway, caught back, she comes, but then the relation proceeds in spite of difficulties, but gradually, Marian feels claustrophobic within the confines of this relationship. She feels she is losing her individuality. And then at one point of time, she stops eating. She cannot eat anymore. Why? because she identifies herself with food. Just as men and women all eat food, again within patriarchy, women are made as food for not man but patriarchal man. Not all men are patriarchal. So Peter is such a man. So she identifies herself with food and then she cannot eat. Critics have identified with anorexia nervosa or bulimia, these technical terms, but these things do not exactly fit that disease because fiction, after all, has a streak of fiction also, and Atwood did not want to make it, I can say, very technical. Now, she finally decides to break off, and that is very symbolic. Food symbolism is very important in this novel. So one day she makes a cake which resembles her fully, and then when Peter comes to meet her, she directly takes him, by the horns, as it were. You have been trying to destroy me, Peter, like this she says, haven't you? You have been trying to assimilate me. That is, I won't have any personality. Whatever you say, I should follow. These kinds of things. She says, I think I can give you a better substitute. Take this cake and eat it, assimilate it. I am not to be assimilated within your frames of reference. That immediately snaps the cord between them. Peter understands that Marian is not the type of the lady he wants, the dumb type who listens to everything done by Pati Parameshwar or husband, etc. He immediately leaves, and then Marian comments that Peter has gone, now she will look for a job. The earlier job in between was discontinued, so different thing. That is, it also signals that women's need for economic independence. In Indian society and in all other societies earlier, but till now in Indian and the third also, the pattern is if you have a boy and a girl, get the boy ready for job and the girl for marriage. It's changing, but still it is in villages and all. We cannot judge India by 20-30% of metropolitan life, but that is very wrong today. In fact, it can be rather opposite, that if it is, if there are two, in fact the women should be made to be independent so that they are not exploited within the structures of patriarchy. So as you know, I have said different times, feminism also is an umbrella term today. There are different kinds of feminisms, ranging from radical feminism to liberal feminism. In between, we can say Marxist feminism. Atwood is not a radical feminist. She shows the pitfall of radical feminism without naming it. That Clara, who wanted to have a child without a father, once she is pregnant, then there is tremendous trauma, and she finally gets trapped into patriarchy. Then there is a third model, Clara, this was Ainsley. Just I spoke about Ainsley. There is another girl called Clara, Marian's friend. She is a very comfortable domestic woman. By the time the novel starts, she has her third pregnancy and she doesn't mind. She is just the childbearing mother of traditional setup. So different types of women have been given. The very radical, very traditional, Marian McAlpin in between, who finally grows from her state of indecision, indeterminacy, low self-esteem to a full-fledged individual who has her own decision, own determination. That is why the title, The Edible Woman, in a way is a bit misleading, because finally the protagonist doesn't remain an edible woman. She becomes a woman, a person rather. Even I don't like to refer to people as man, woman these days. Person, individual. So in a way, this is a very important novel, and it takes care of the first wave feminism issues in a very nice way. Even some of the issues of the so-called second wave feminism, of equality at workplace, etc., all those kinds of things are shown. So at some point of time, you would read the novel even if you don't read other novels by Atwood. Stylistically, one very important thing is that the novel has three parts. In the beginning, it uses first person narration. In the middle, that is part 2, when Marian has become totally a kind of a limbo kind of existence out of her psychological trauma, the narration shifts to third person. That signifies Marian's loss of selfhood. Again, in the last part, after Peter is rejected and all that, she regains her individuality to signify that third part is again narrated in first person. That is Marian's voice. So this is the thing. So that was all about the Edible Woman, an important text, I repeat, by Margaret Atwood.